Hi everyone, it's Benilda here. So I wanted to make a video specifically for anyone that's contemplating therapy but has been having a really hard time figuring out the difference between a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a psychotherapist, a registered social worker. And I get it. I get it. So I don't know how long this video is going to be. We'll find out because there's a lot of details. But I think if you have been confused, and if you feel like this has been the very thing that's been stopping you from seeking support, then I definitely encourage you to listen to this video. So a little bit about me. I grew up helping my mom out in her office. So she is a retired psychiatrist. So I grew up, spending a lot of time in her private practice as, a receptionist, doing filing, doing typing, and eventually I started working alongside her. And so let's start with defining what a psychiatrist is. So a psychiatrist is a medical doctor. So getting a referral because you have skin issues and you're going to see a dermatologist, it's the same type of thing, getting a referral from your family doctor to seek mental health support from another specialist who specializes in administering and overseeing medication for mental health issues. Mental health conditions. And so like I was saying, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor and their services are covered by OHIP. So if you live in Ontario, sorry, I got cut off. Provided that you have a health card, then you can see a psychiatrist and the fees will be covered. Now, not all psychiatrists are will use their time to provide psychotherapy. Now, so if you're looking for somebody to be able to go through your story with, to spend time with, to form a connection with, you may not necessarily get that from a psychiatrist. The main role of a psychiatrist is to oversee your medication, to ensure that it's the appropriate dosage, the appropriate type of medication for your condition, and they can, monitor your side effects and so forth. Some psychiatrists are able, all of them are, they are authorized to be able to do psychotherapy with you, but not all of them will. So you might find that you get a referral to a psychiatrist, but you may only end up spending 15 minutes with a psychiatrist. If you are lucky enough to find a psychiatrist that does psychotherapy, and then that's fantastic. And that's the kind of work that my mother did. So she would spend, for example, an hour with each of her patients, and they would form a relationship. And, her approach involved, it was very spiritual in nature. It involved, medication, medication, of course, but meditation. She ran groups, but that was her specific approach. So not all of them are going to have that approach. And so that covers psychiatry. Now let's move on to a psychologist. So a psychologist has done a whole doctorate degree in psychology. So they would have, done their undergrad and gone in, completed a master's and a PhD in psychology. And so particularly a clinical psychologist would then have a doctorate degree in clinical psychology. So they would have completed, extensive research and would have, clinical training and experience and would have completed internships and so forth. And so their services are not covered by OHIP, so it's not covered by any health insurance. And so typically you're looking at paying out of pocket for their services. However, if you have workplace insurance, so if you have extended health benefits through your work, then you can check with your benefits provider to see if psychologists or psychology services are covered on your insurance plan, and then you can check how much insurance you have, so you can apply to receive reimbursements for the fees that you pay. So typically, because psychologists have, they have quite extensive formal education, formal university education, their fees are at least upwards of 200 plus, maybe approaching 300 per hour. So it can be quite expensive. So again, if you're looking for therapy and you're looking for someone to establish a relationship with, yes, you can see a clinical psychologist. You might just be looking at quite a a hefty hourly fee, so you'll have to be prepared to be able to pay those hourly fees. Now, not all psychologists provide therapy. There are many psychologists that do assessments, or they work in government settings. I mean, there are many different kinds of psychologists. So that's the other thing. You'd have to look for a psychologist that provides psychotherapy, and then look at what their hourly rate is, and then look to see if you have any insurance coverage to reimburse you for their fees. Okay, the next one is psychotherapist. Okay, so psychotherapy, so the act of providing psychotherapy is a regulated act. And so there are many different professions that are authorized to perform the act of psychotherapy. So psychiatrists are authorized. I believe even nurses might be. So psychologists can perform psychotherapy. And but there are also other professions that can perform the act of psychotherapy, provide psychotherapy services. So you might hear of the term registered psychotherapist. So registered psychotherapists, so those are ones that they may have a background in masters in counseling, but you also might find some professions where they have a master's in art therapy, even music therapy. So I also have a degree in music therapy, and I'm a music therapist. So you may have people who are registered psychotherapists that have, there's diverse kinds of backgrounds that people bring into that profession. And so the way that they have registered themselves is as registered psychotherapists. And so that is also a regulated profession. The act of psychotherapy can be performed by many different professions. So again, it's not all insurance plans cover registered psychotherapists. You would have to check with your insurance plan to see what kinds of services are covered and by whom. So some insurance plans might say, okay, yes, you can receive, psychotherapy services, but it's going to have to be by a psychologist, or it's going to have to be by a registered social worker. So you'll have to check your insurance plan to see if it's actually, if psychotherapy is actually covered by registered psychotherapists, because that is a specific regulated profession. So that's one thing to check, and also to say that it's, services by a registered psychotherapist are not necessarily, are not covered by OHIP. So unless it's a psychiatrist, it won't. So psychiatrists are the only profession that are covered by OHIP. So I apologize. I'm speaking specifically to residents living in Ontario. Okay, I'm going to move on to registered social workers. Okay, so I am a registered social worker and I provide psychotherapy services. So if somebody would like to see a therapist, they can seek services from a registered social worker that that provides psychotherapy services. So I am also authorized within my regulated profession to deliver psychotherapy services, to perform the act of psychotherapy with clients. And so, with my education, so I happen to have, a degree in psychology, a degree in music therapy, and I have a master's degree in social work. And so, I'm registered as a registered social worker, and so with the experience that I've obtained over the years and the training, the extra training that I've received in various kinds of therapy approaches, I am in I am in private practice, and so I do provide psychotherapy services. And so typically our fees are not as high as those that are psychologists. So the reason why I want to highlight that is because a lot of people think that if they have a mental health condition, and if they would like to see a therapist, they feel that they have to see a psychologist. And I have full respect for for all psychologists out there. I just wanted to stress though that people don't necessarily have to see a psychologist if they're looking for mental health support. And it's often, the fees are significantly less to see someone that is a registered social worker. Typically our fees range, let's say, I'm just going to say a ballpark figure of about like 130 an hour, versus a psychologist, you're, like I was saying, you're looking at upwards of 200 plus an hour. So, and I just want to say as well, for registered psychotherapists, if you happen to see someone that has that title, their fees would be similar to a registered social worker. As for insurance coverage, so for a registered social worker, again, not covered by OHIP, and however, if again in your workplace, if you happen to have extended health benefits, you can check on your insurance plan to see if services, so psychological services or psychotherapy services by a registered social worker, are covered. So I would say that actually all my clients that I see have coverage for a registered social worker. It is part of their extended health benefits, and so they pay me out of pocket, and then I provide a receipt, and then they submit the receipt for reimbursement. And so some insurance plans will reimburse you 80%, 90%, and so forth. So you can check those details. So again, you'd want to check with your insurance plan to see what's covered, so if psychotherapy is covered, and if it's covered by a registered social worker. Okay, so next you'll hear things like life coach or coach, counselor. So those titles are so they're not regulated professions in the sense that they have to answer to a certain kind of regulatory body, for example, for the way they deliver their services. Although, for example, if you are, let's say you're a student at a university, they might offer counseling services as part of being a student at university, or so you might hear the word counselor. Now, most of the time, the people, if you were to see a counselor, let's say through your university, those people, I would imagine, would have master's degrees in counseling and so forth. Now, now, when it comes to a life coach, or you might hear a certified coach, so those professions are, they can be absolute supports for people who are looking to make some significant changes or improvements in their lives. And there are many coaches that do have a real, like their niche market is really working with people who, let's say, have experienced trauma or things like that. They might be trauma informed. You know, and I would imagine that most coaches would agree with me that, they're not working with, like if you are struggling with a mental health condition or a diagnosed mental illness, they are not there to treat that. In fact, like they would probably recommend that you see a regulated professional, a psychotherapist, for example, to actually, support you with your mental health condition. However, a life coach, for example, or a certified coach, can really help you to help bring structure and goals into your life, so that you can achieve your potential to to um, to some of the things that you would like to realize in your life. And so, both are very complementary. It's just to say that you wouldn't necessarily, it may not be recommended that you see a life coach specifically to treat a mental health condition, because their specialty is not necessarily in that. It might be great to have both, but that's just one thing to be aware of. And so life coaches, they can set their own fees. They can charge as much as they want per hour, and so they have free reign to kind of define what the work and what the fees are going to look like. So definitely paying out of pocket for that. I personally follow a lot of coaches, on Instagram or whatever, because I personally benefit a lot from a lot of the teachings that I learn from coaches. Just again, to emphasize that if you are specifically looking for mental health support, to treat a mental health condition like anxiety, depression, and other mental illnesses, for example, that I don't recommend that you look to a life coach to treat that. Now, so one thing that, if you're looking into therapy, or if you've been considering it, is the other thing too, is that you want to look at what you are currently living with. Is it anxiety? Is it depression? Is it trauma that you're working through? I mean, you might not even be sure, and that's fine. But you're gonna want to find out if the professional that you're interested in working with has experience in what it is that you are looking to work through and to resolve and to heal. And because that's the other thing. So for example, for me, I don't work with people who have addictions, because that's just not the specialty that I've been trained in. So my specialty is working with people who have trauma. So, we say developmental trauma, so any trauma that may have occurred in childhood, any issues with, forming bonds with caregivers, is anxiety, depression. Those are the things, the areas that I work with. So I would typically take clients then that are, that those are the things that they would like to do the work with. I won't I won't do this in this video, but I'll make another video to go through, if you are going to seek support from a therapist of some sort, some questions to ask them to make sure that it's the right fit. So I guess then, to summarize, I named, so we went through psychiatrist, psychologist, registered psychotherapist, registered social worker, life coach. I mentioned a little bit of counseling. Okay, so in summary, again, psychiatrist is a medical doctor covered by OHIP if you live in Ontario. They do not necessarily provide psychotherapy services, but they might. So you can look for that, and they specialize in overseeing your medication. Psychologist, clinical psychologist. Yes, they you can look into seeing if they provide psychotherapy services, and the fees are just quite high. So you just wanna look out for that. Registered psychotherapist, obviously they provide psychotherapy and have often bring different kinds of backgrounds, whether it be someone having a background in counseling or even art therapy, music therapy, and there's probably many others. But a registered psychotherapist, obviously providing psychotherapy, and the fees are going to be probably less than a psychologist, not covered by OHIP. But you'll need to check your insurance plan at work if you have one to see if they're covered. Registered social worker, we are authorized to provide psychotherapy. So yes, again, not covered by OHIP. Check your workplace insurance to see if you're covered for services by specifically a registered social worker. Coach. You can work with a coach, you can pay out of pocket, and if you like their approach and if you're connected to that coach and you like their energy, then go for it. But again, if you have a mental health condition that you want to do the work specifically with, then I would recommend that you seek psychotherapy from one of the other professions that I mentioned. If you have any questions about this, because I probably didn't explain everything and there's probably many nuances, just ask me. I'm explaining it the best that I possibly can, having grown up in a psychiatry office and getting to understand kind of the differences between the professions, and having to have navigated this whole area just through my own life. I'm just answering it the best that I can. So feel free. And I think what I'll do actually after this video is, if you look at the link in my Instagram bio, if you're watching this not on Instagram, you can look me up it's at Benilda Therapy. And if you look at the link in my bio, I'll link it specifically to a blog post where I outlined all of these differences. So I really, really hope that helps. And thanks so much for watching.